Yeah, so please let us start our final keynote speech at TELIC 2023 conference. I would like to thank all the participants again for being with us. We've had very interesting 3-day conference, and I would like to thank Yazdan for all his efforts as well. So Yazdan, please go ahead, introduce yourself first, and then read the title and introduce Dr. Warschauer, and I would read the bio.
Mark, everyone, it's so good to be back with you guys. For those of you who have just joined the conference, my name is Yazdan. I'm the communication slash, what's the other one? I'm in marketing chair of TELIC 2023. My greetings from the Sultanate of Oman, Muscat, where I teach English as a foreign language at Sultan Qaboos University, the Center for Preparatory Studies. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Professor Mark Warschauer, who is about to present on generative AI and digital literacy considerations for second language learning.
Thank you so much, Yazdan, for that. And I'm going to read the short bio. Mark Warschauer is a professor of education and director of the Digital Learning Lab at the University of California, Irvine, with affiliated appointments in the Department of Informatics, the Department of Language Science, and the Department of Psychological Sciences. Professor Warschauer is one of the most widely cited researchers in the world on digital learning, with seminal contributions to topics such as computer-assisted language learning, the nature of digital literacy, and the uses of AI in language and literacy development. He has received more than $20 million in federal grants for his research, has published 12 books and some 400 papers, and has served as a founding editor of two prominent open access journals, Language Learning and Technology and AERA Open, which is affiliated with the American Educational Research Association. He's a member of the National Academic of Education as well. Professor Warschauer, thank you so much. I would like to deeply thank you for accepting the invitation. I know how busy you are, but when I reached out to you, you were so kind and supportive of our initiative to start this open access conference. And to the audience, if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Amin Dawoodi, Assistant Professor of Bilingual and ESL Education at the University of Texas, Permian Basin, located in Odessa, West Texas. Without further ado,
should we remind the audience of the conference photo just one last time?
Oh yeah, after this keynote speech, we would like to take a photo, like a screenshot with the audience. So in case, like me, you have long hair and you want to take care of that, you may do that now. Okay, thank you so much for being with us. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And it's really a pleasure. Some of you might know I have quite a bit of international experience working in different places in the world, and I love to connect with people around the world, and this is a great opportunity to do that. And I'm especially excited to speak today because some of the research I'm going to present today, we were literally doing work on it yesterday and this morning. So this is brand new. Some of this will be brand new, fresh research. So let's get started here. I'm not that used to using Microsoft Teams. I hope this works. I have sound on one of my slides, so I hope that will work when we get to it. So after ChatGPT came out, we've all seen the headlines starting in December 2022. The end of high school English, to January when the bans started to come out, to February when talking to AI was described as the most important job skill of the future. So which is it? Is this something that should be banned? Is this something really important for our students? And this is not the first form of AI that we're used to in language learning settings. A lot of our students are already using Grammarly or programs such as Quillbot, which can do automatic rephrasing, or Google Translate. But this is something that is more powerful than all of those and can do everything that they can do and more. Such as, for example, it can write an essay on almost any topic. It spat out an essay about, I asked it to write an essay about me, and it put this out in about 30 seconds. So how does it do all these things? Is there a secret intelligent being behind that doing that all? Well, I think you all know that of course not. I think you're all familiar with this. It's a form of autocomplete for email. And ChatGPT is basically the same principle, except at a much, much larger scale. It's trained on everything that's been published online in the last 8 years. GPT-3, which was the original foundation of ChatGPT, was trained on something like 500 billion tokens. That's about 350 billion words. And they say that GPT-4 is perhaps much, much larger than that. So let's go back, though. It's not perfect, as we all know. Let's go back to this essay it wrote about me. The first couple of paragraphs are quite accurate. But then you go to the third paragraph and it says, I've been a visiting scholar at Harvard, Stanford, and Cambridge. And in fact, I've never been a visiting scholar at any of them. It's making guesses based on patterns seen in text. And in these cases, the guesses are wrong. And misinformation is not the only problem. It also can be biased. Here's an example where the sentence was, the paralegal married the attorney because she was pregnant. And ChatGPT automatically assumed that it was the paralegal that was pregnant rather than the attorney, because it simply couldn't believe that attorneys could be female based on the training set of its data. Here's an example in our own research. We often turn to ChatGPT. We wanted it to produce titles for 10 bilingual narrative ebooks. And a couple of them they came up with like Magical Piñata and Counting with Abuela, we thought those were pretty nice. The Little Tortilla Boy, that seemed kind of cringeworthy to us and culturally insensitive at least. And these stereotypes extend also to other forms of generative AI like images. Some of you might have seen this well-known example from Midjourney that it was asked to produce images of what a professor looks like in certain fields, and they were in the high stakes economics and STEM fields. They were predominantly white men. So with all these problems, information, bias, stereotype, should we just give it up? And I would suggest not so fast. ChatGPT also has powerful affordances. Imagine for a second, this is a woman named Park Soo-min, a biochemist trained at Seoul National Universities, and one of the major scholars in the world doing research on the uses of stem cells to combat cancer. She is driven by her research. She has a mission. She's one of the world's experts. She majored in biochemistry. She didn't major in foreign language. But anytime she wants to present her research to the world, she's required to do it in English, to publish in English, to present in English, to communicate with colleagues around the world in English. This is a huge tax on her. It's a tax on her time. It's a tax on her money. It makes it harder for her to get things published. She gets negative feedback on her publications that it's not native-like enough on the language. ChatGPT can be a tremendous resource for Park Soo-min. What about Jose Alvarez sitting at the laptop? Jose immigrated to the United States at the age of 15. Though he was never that good of a student, he had great ideas and great business acumen, and he opened a small business for custom-made furniture. Jose's been in the United States a long time, and he can speak English fine in informal settings, but his written English is not that good. He needs to develop marketing materials, promotional materials, content for his website, emails for customers. All of this takes an enormous amount of time and effort and expense. Think about what ChatGPT can do for him. Or Cheikh Diop is a high school instructor in Senegal. He wants it to help his students succeed so they can go to universities. A lot of them want to go to the universities in around the world, whether it be England or the United States or Australia or other countries. They need to improve their writing in English. But he teaches more than 200, sometimes 300 students a day. Where can he find the time to give them actionable feedback on their writing? Maybe ChatGPT can help him as well. So let's talk about what ChatGPT can do, starting with teaching and how ChatGPT might be able to help Mr. Diop. It can quickly create a syllabus on any topic. ChatGPT can create lesson plans for teachers. It can adapt the lesson plans for different time levels to incorporate more active learning activities. It can adopt the lesson plans for students at different levels. It can incorporate more active learning activities into the lesson plans. He can develop, if he's teaching, he can develop role plays for his classes. He can give them examples of materials. Maybe he needs an example of an opinion paragraph. And it can help him identify errors in his students' writing. It can adjust the difficulty of text. This is really, really valuable, and as an English teacher, to be able to take texts and adjust them to different levels. It can make quizzes for him. It can instantaneously make quizzes on almost any topic, and it can edit and improve those quizzes. Let's make all the questions related to that use do or be, or let's have a different mix of questions. And very importantly, and something that I want to go over in depth, it can provide feedback. Feedback is very useful for students to understand how to improve their writing, but can be very difficult to provide feedback on every assignment. ChatGPT can help provide that feedback. So let's test and see what kind of feedback it can give. And I want to go into a little bit about automated essay scoring and then tell you about a little bit of the research that our lab has been doing on this. So automated essay scoring, do you know what this is? This is the holy grail for those of you who are familiar with Christianity, and that typically refers to something that you want very much, but it is very hard to get or achieve. And high quality automated essay scoring and feedback is considered, the holy grail of the teaching of writing, or at least educational technology for the teaching of writing and second language writing. I did a study about this a number of years ago, and we called it Utility in a Fallible Tool, because even if the essay isn't perfect, it can motivate students to write more and more and more, and it can also assist teachers. One of the teachers in our studies called it a second pair of eyes in the classroom. By automatically scoring essays, it could let the teacher focus their energy in other ways, for example, on students who really needed it. So how does automated essay scoring work? It starts with a corpus of essays which have already been scored by humans on the exact same prompt. And it does machine analysis of new essays on that prompt. That it takes the new essays and it feeds them into the software, and it looks at all their quantifiable features, their words, their phrases, their syntax, and their characters. And then it balances. It compares these new essays and says, okay, these other essays were already scored by humans. Now let's look at the words, phrases, syntax, and characters of this new essay. Does that look like a 2 or a 3 or a 4? And then it gives it a score like that. Now the big question is how it compares to human scoring. And here the results are actually remarkable. Humans themselves are not that reliable or consistent. And one of the things that's been found through this process, if you have a number of essays that have been scored by several humans and you have a consensus score by them, and then you give it to a new human, well, the human's match may not be that good. But if you give it to the AI, to automated scoring, it can actually do a lot better. And here was a competition where the five top vendors all did better. Actually, more than five, all did better. The human performance is the red there. That's how humans, how closely humans can get to other humans. They use something called the kappa for this. But actually, the automated scoring software actually did better. So that sounds pretty good. But there is one huge limitation. To take advantage of this, you have to assign an essay on a topic that you already have a huge corpus of scored essays on, and not just 20 or 30, but hundreds of them. So basically, you can't assign an essay on anything you want. You can't let your students choose their essay topic. You have to assign them a specific essay topic. And here's an example. If you go to turnitin.com, which has automated scoring, these are all of its secondary school writing prompts. There's not that many of them. So maybe you choose, the right to privacy. Should children have the same rights to privacy as adults? Write an argument on which you should make a claim about whether or not children have the same right to privacy. Well, if your students write it on that essay, you can use automatic scoring. But what if you want to have students write it on any topic they want? Well, here's where ChatGPT potentially comes in, because ChatGPT is based on a very different mechanism. So we wanted to say, what happens if you ask ChatGPT to score essays without any training set? You just give ChatGPT the same instruction you gave the human scores. Score it on such and such rubric from 1 to something with no training set. So we're actually in the midst of a study. We're going to do this with tens of thousands of essays. We haven't got there yet. We've only done it on the first few hundred essays. These were written by secondary students. They were history essays. There were a lot of English learners among them. And all of these were trained by highly trained human scorers. And the human scores were, they spent 3 hours training on how to score these. And they gave a single 1 to 6 rubric that on content and ideas, evidence and use, structure, language use and conventions, and historical thinking. And then we fed all of these essays to ChatGPT with the exact same rubric. Score these essays from 1 to 6 on these 6 areas. And what do we find out? Well, this looks fantastic. It's not exact, but the average ChatGPT score was very close. On 1 to 6, that's pretty close. The average ChatGPT score to the average human score. That looks really, really good. If you see those error bars, the standard deviations were almost identical. 1.26 for humans, 1.27 for ChatGPT. By the way, I generated this chart with ChatGPT's new code interpreter. So if any of you are using the paid version, the $20 a month version of ChatGPT, you have to try the code interpreter. It's wild. Okay, so all of this looks pretty good. But the mean AI and human scores were very close. And also the AI consistency was much better than human consistency. So see these scores here, ChatGPT were almost on each particular essay, they were almost about the same, where humans varied more. But remember, here's the gold standard. How does the ChatGPT scoring compare to the human scoring? Not just on the mean or on the average, but on each individual essay. And I'm sorry to say that here the results were pretty miserable. So remember, this was a 6-point scale. These trained humans, they agreed with each other 54% of the time on exact agreement of score. The human ChatGPT only got the exact score 22% of the time. Within 1 point score, 88% of the time, human. Human AI, 37% time. Very low correlation and miserable kappa score. Basically what this means, imagine it's a 6-point scale and you give it to ChatGPT. ChatGPT comes within 1 point of what a human would give only 1/3 of the time. That means ChatGPT might have the same average score of about 3, but the score on individual essays is wildly different than humans. So I'm sad to say, at least so far, ChatGPT is not very good at scoring. But what about feedback? Feedback is actually much more valuable than scoring. It's one thing if you give a student a score. It's another thing if you give them actionable feedback, written feedback on how they can improve their essays. And this is something, we said that automated essay scoring with, a trained on corpus of essays was really, really good. The scoring, the feedback is really, really bad. Here's Turnitin.com's. It gives very, very generic thing. Develop your claim so it specifically addresses the strategies and sources you're intended to affect. Focus each point of the analysis to support your claim. When you support your ideas, you provide proof of why they're true through direct evidence. I mean, this is all really generic and almost useless. I wonder how ChatGPT can do. So we took the same essays that had been scored by 200 humans. And not only had they been scored by humans, but they had received feedback from those same 200 humans on their content and ideas, evidence use, structure, language use and conventions, historical thinking. And then we told ChatGPT, we fed each of these 200 to ChatGPT with these instructions. Pretend you are a secondary school teacher. Provide 2 to 3 pieces of specific actionable feedback on each of the following essays written to this rubric, and we gave them the rubric, that highlight what the student has done well and what they could improve on. Use a friendly and encouraging tone. If needed, provide examples of how the student could improve their essay. Well, here's the results. I'm going to give you a minute to look at those two and to guess which one is the human feedback and which one is the ChatGPT feedback. Okay, let's go ahead and see how ChatGPT did and see how you did on the guess. The one on the left was ChatGPT. The one on the right was human. But we have hundreds and hundreds of examples of these. Now, here's what we did next. I love this research design. We scored the feedback. We took highly trained experts, people with masters or PhDs in applied linguistics. And we had them blindly code all the human and AI feedback. We gave them all the feedback and we asked them to score it on a 1 to 5 basis on these 5 things. Was the feedback criteria based? Meaning, did the feedback speak to all the criteria it was supposed to that we gave it before? Was it clear? Was it accurate? Was it developmentally appropriate? Was it supportive? And here we found out something really interesting. Human feedback was better, but not very much better. In fact, on the criteria, did they address all the specific criteria? The ChatGPT feedback was a little better. I mean, not surprising because it's a software and it's going to make sure to do exactly what you tell it to do. But on actionable, accurate, developmentally appropriate, supportive, it was almost as good. I mean, this is incredibly valuable. This means that Mr. Diop can use ChatGPT to give his students feedback, and it's probably going to be excellent. Now, in some ways, it might even be better than what he can do, because these were highly trained experts. He may or may not have as much expertise. He might not have as much time. Of course, maybe he can do better because he knows these students individually and he's built a relationship with them. So it's not that it replaces what the teacher can do, but maybe it could give feedback on the first round and the teacher could give it on the last edit. So this is really, really interesting. Okay, let's skip from teaching to learning. What kind of things can ChatGPT do for English language learners? Well, it can help them write essays, as we already know. It can help them brainstorm ideas for essays. It can help summarize articles and readings for them. It can also change them to different levels. It can draft thesis statements for them. It can use that thesis statement to come up with an outline of a paper. It can write counter arguments. It can provide feedback to them, just like it can provide to their instructor. It can provide specific suggestions, and it can explain why it made changes. It can translate for them. You know, I haven't tried it in all languages, and maybe more of you have experience, but with the languages that I'm best at, which are Spanish and English, translating from Spanish to English, ChatGPT is much, much better than Google Translate. It's no comparison. So just like we're doing some research on its use of a tool for teachers, we're also started some research on use of a tool for learners. And this is a case study of an international graduate student named Kai-Ling Hua. Kai-Ling is a non-native speaker from China who did not, and it's a pseudonym, she did not major in English, and it's not her real picture either, but she did not major in English in college. And she first came to the US as a graduate student. So it was quite hard. Now she did finish a master's degree before she started her PhD. So she's been in the US a few years. But you know, I'm married to an immigrant from Japan who came about the same age as Kai-Ling, and I know how hard of a struggle it is for decades, you know, to learn academic writing. But Kai-Ling was identified as one of the best academic writers of any graduate student at her university, and this is compared to all the native speakers. Writing course papers, publication manuscripts, and even professional grant proposals at the quality of a very skillful professor. So how was she able to do that? We knew that she used ChatGPT, but we didn't really know how. And so we invited her to be part of a case study interview. And we found out that she does this through a highly interactive joint authoring process of back and forth communication with ChatGPT across all stages of the writing process. So it starts with brainstorming idea. She asked ChatGPT to give her ideas on her topic, and then she asks it to elaborate on, she picks an idea she likes best, and she asks it to elaborate. She asks it to raise any potential concerns and discuss the pros and cons of that idea. She also uses it in her research process. She asks it to identify researchers on topics and to identify themes. And she asks us, you know, which are the most relevant of those themes in the particular area she's interested in. And she asks it very specific things like what's gone on in Georgia on this topic in implementation projects, because that's one of the topic of her proposal. After all that, she comes up with a very detailed outline. And then she asks ChatGPT to develop a draft. But she doesn't just accept that draft. I mean, that draft is lacking in a lot of ways. It's lacking a lot of details. It's got wrong citations. I mean, she works on that very carefully to bring it up to par. And then finally, she asks it to revise and do it and edit it for her. And even after it does that, she continues to work with it to get it in the voice that she wants. So this was fascinating to me. This is really a new form of authorship that certainly wouldn't have been possible before, and allows her to extend her own considerable strengths with the strengths of ChatGPT to produce very high quality work. I'm just fascinated by this example. Here are Kai Ling's own comments. This process is very helpful for me as an international student because sometimes I find it difficult to write up or to express what I want to convey rapidly and accurately in English, but ChatGPT can do this job very well. To me, ChatGPT is a very high quality text generator, but it's not a very good idea generator. So I always rely on ChatGPT to generate high quality text while I generate the ideas. And through a back and forth process, I can achieve my writing goals. Just fascinating. So this is a really interesting example of what we can try to achieve. How to get there. We have to deal with some contradictions. The first is what I call the imitation contradiction. English learners and developing writers are constantly told they need to imitate native speakers' English use. But when they borrow exact phrases from sources, they can be accused of plagiarism. Remember that Korean scientist I spoke about before? Well, picture her a few years earlier as a high school student. Now she might be forbidden from using ChatGPT, or she might be accused of plagiarism if she does. The same students who will benefit a lot from it will likely be accused the most because it will improve their writing the most. There's also the rich get richer contradiction. AI is an incredibly powerful tool for assisting communication. But to get, as we saw with Kai Ling, to get the most out of it, you need to know how to prompt it well, critically evaluate its output, and edit, incorporate its work. That's a contradiction we have to think about. Finally, there's the with or without it contradiction. If students never learn to use AI, they will be at a disadvantage in their studies and careers. On the other hand, if they use AI too much and too early, they will also be at a disadvantage as they will be robbed of foundational skills necessary to use it well. So it's similar in a way to a graphing calculator, an essential tool in advanced mathematics, but it can backfire if it's introduced at too young of an age because it could prevent young children from learning important foundational skills. All this ties to what I call the June-July contradiction. I know we have people here from around the world and your academic calendar might be different, but in the United States in June, students are still in school and there they might get punished for using ChatGPT. However, in July in the United States, they're out of school, maybe they're out in the workforce, and there they might get punished for not knowing how to use ChatGPT because employers care much more about efficiency and productivity than they care about authenticity. So what do we do about this contradiction? Have we dealt with this thing kind of before? And I would say yes, in the field of computer-assisted language learning. So, way back in the 1970s and 80s, when we first started in the field of CAL, students worked at computers and they did exercises. And people saw computer-assisted language learning as a way of teaching the exact same thing, the exact same, grammar and vocabulary, except perhaps in a more efficient way. But then, I was fortunate enough in the 1990s to get in on some of this research on the ground floor. And this was my dissertation, actually, and it was one of my first books on electronic literacies. And I interviewed English learners who were using computer-assisted language learning, as it were, in their classes. And they had very interesting things to say. We are a small university far from Jakarta. We have a library, but it needs to be improved. The computer right now is very important. You can get information from outside, and I can also submit my findings or what I have done, because maybe I cannot attend seminars, because I cannot buy tickets. but my computer, I can distribute the results of my research so everybody else can know what I've done or find out, or another student. It's very important because in Cambodia, if you have to ask for a job at an NGO or elsewhere, the first thing they do is ask for computer skills and English speaking. They're very important for my career. So rather than seeing computers as just a more efficient way to learn English, they saw computers as together with English, something very, very important to their lives and important to a new way of communicating, of writing, of sharing, of living in the world. And that's where came out the idea of digital literacy. You know, you might see that I call this book Electronic Literacies. This book was done so long ago, you know, back in I started work on this in the mid-1990s, before the term digital literacies was popularized. So then I started to use that. So that's the skills, knowledge, and attitudes to use technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information. So we were no longer just using computers to teach the same thing, but using computers to teach important new ways of reading, writing, speaking, listening, and communicating. And to that, we have to add AI literacy. That's how we get out of these contradictions. That's how we give students all the skills to use it well. So we've come up with a framework in my lab, a 5-part framework for developing students' digital literacy. The first one is they have to understand it. This is a wonderful example that I love that was developed by Emily Thomford of AI for California. Emily modeled a large language model similar to ChatGPT, but in a miniature version that was trained solely on green eggs and ham by Dr. Seuss. And this illustrates nicely the probabilistic modeling underlying these language models, with a thickness of arrows indicating likelihood of word combinations. So based on this book, the word I is most likely followed by would or do, or sometimes am, and so on. This is a nice, simple way to illustrate to students how these text generation works. They can also understand it by using it in the classroom. You can have them compare the strengths and weaknesses of essays written by ChatGPT to those not written by ChatGPT. Guess which is what and analyze them. Accessing is important. We need to teach them to access a wide variety of tools. This is a great example I like, you know, because a lot of our students won't have their own accounts. One thing that we're experimenting with is using, and this costs a little bit of money because we have to pay for ChatGPT's API, but that doesn't cost that much. You can create their own sites. For example, WordPress has a plugin that you can use. So this is an example of a writing site for teenagers where they write their material and they click on all pre-selected prompts and they can do things. And then this connects to ChatGPT. So they have their own login here, but they don't need their own account. I think schools and universities need to be thinking about this as an option. We have to teach them how to prompt. And we saw with the example of Kailing, how beautiful she iteratively prompts. Or here's an example of an instructor, how they iteratively prompt to get just the syllabus and exam that they wanted. We have to teach them to corroborate. And here is where I hope that this is going to share not only my screen, but also my sound. Let's see if that works. Oh, before we get to that, I asked ChatGPT to list 10 important papers written by Mark Warschauer. So take 10 seconds and look over these and see if you can guess how many of these were actually written by me. Well, the answer was 6. It's pretty good. And I think those other ones are real papers too. And they sound like the type of papers I would write, but I didn't write them. Now here's the one where I'm going to share the sound. I taught a class on AI in education last quarter, and 2 of the students in the course developed this deep fake video of me. So let's go ahead and listen to it.
We don't have the sound.
I'm sorry. It was just
But we have played videos like many times in the past 3 days. So
yeah, the thing is that you need to stop sharing your screen and again share your screen. When you do that, there is an option that says share screen with computer sound as well. You need to tick that.
Okay, let me finish the presentation, and if we have time,
Sure.
we'll do that during the Q&A. But basically, I apologize. I'm used to Zoom, but not used to Teams. So this is basically a fake video of me saying things that I didn't really say, and I'll demonstrate it. It's only a 10-second video, and I'll demonstrate it after we finish. But what these things bring to mind is how we teach students to corroborate. You know, we're used to teaching students to corroborate vertically by digging deeper into particular documents or particular sites or particular audio or particular video to try to figure out if it's true or not. People at Stanford realize that in the age of digital information, it's actually much more efficient and effective to corroborate things laterally rather than vertically. You know, no matter how many times you listen to that video of me, you won't be able to figure out it's a deep fake. At least if it was done really, really well. That was done kind of amateurishly. Or if you look at a document written by ChatGPT, you won't be able to figure it out. You have to go outside. So we have to teach students to corroborate information by looking back and forth at other trusted sources. And finally, we have to teach students how to incorporate into their own writing ethically and effectively. Here's a sample syllabus I found online, which I really don't like very much. It basically prohibits students from any use of AI language models in course assignments. And I fear that if we adopt this kind of approach, we'll be robbing our students of the AI literacy skills needed for their futures. Here is an example of a syllabus by Ryan Baker at University of Pennsylvania, which I really like. He says they're welcome to use foundational models such as ChatGPT in an unrestricted fashion for any purpose and at no penalty. He goes on to counsel them on the dangers they should pay attention to, such as inaccuracies or biases, and points out that its use has to be documented, but concludes by specifically encouraging use of these models as it may make it possible for students to submit higher quality assignments in less time. I love this idea. So in conclusion, I want to go back to a slide. This is a slide, these last two slides I first showed in a presentation in 1997, 26 years ago. And it goes back to the idea of, what computer-assisted instruction is versus digital literacy. There was a poem about computer-assisted instruction. Word has come down from the dean that by aid of the computing machine, young Oedipus Rex could have learned about sex without ever touching the queen. The idea was that computer-assisted instruction or computer-assisted language learning, it would be able to isolate something and somebody could sit down on it and without having to get involved in the real world, they could learn. But once we developed the concept of digital literacy, I thought we really needed very different metaphors and approaches. And I found this quote by a man named Ben Schneiderman that I really liked, which is, we must teach our students not only how to surf the net, but also how to make waves. In other words, we're using computers in instruction, not in an isolated way that's divorced from reality, but using computers in instruction to really find ways to empower them and amplify their own skills and strengths and resources so they can really put their stamp on the world. And I think that's ChatGPT and generative AI more broadly gives us the potential to do that in ways that we've never done before, if we think about it in open and creative and innovative ways. So thank you very much. It's really easy to find me. Just type myname.com and you can get more. You can find out more of my publications. You can email me. You can find me on Twitter. And thank you. So let me see if I can stop sharing here. Let's see if I can do that. Stop sharing. Okay, I think I stopped sharing. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to go back here to this other video, and maybe I can share it again really quickly. So yeah. I'm going to go to share and include computer sound. Okay. Okay, let's try that again.
Good afternoon. I would like to give everyone a perfect grade in this class because all of you are so cool. Also, shout out to Jacob for being the best one in the room.
I'll show that one more time because it's so fun.
Good afternoon. I would like to give everyone a perfect grade in this class because all of you are so cool. Also, shout out to Jacob for being the best one in the room.
Okay, so let's see if I can stop sharing. So that was put together by Jacob, and he took a video that I had online, and he, it turned me into saying that everybody should get an A, especially him. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and I believe we have some time for questions and answers, and I look forward to answering them.
We do have.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for another great presentation. I really enjoyed it. So Yazdan, do you want to go ahead and start asking the questions?
Yes, I mean, Ivana has a question to ask Mark, but Kava has raised his hand, so you might give him access as well. In the meantime, Mark, this is from Ivana. I loved how you summarized ChatGPT's pros and cons in those illustrative contradictions. One concern related to the use of ChatGPT might be assessing its responses by language learners once they receive the response or feedback. It seems that the student's proficiency in English might significantly interfere with their understanding of the response if it is provided only in more complex or advanced English. Whoops. How can educators ensure that the responses provided are accessible and comprehensible to learners with varying proficiency levels in English? That's it.
That's a terrific question. And one of the great things about ChatGPT is that it can communicate at any level. You can tell it, let's give an example. Let's say I am teaching high school in Oman, but my students are at a beginning level. I can tell ChatGPT, you are a high school English teacher in Oman. Your students are at a very beginning level. I mean, they're mature, they're high school students, but their level of English is very, very low. So when you write the feedback, write it at a very basic English level so they'll be able to understand it. That's one of the amazing things about ChatGPT compared to previous AIs. It has this kind of iterative flexibility, so you can give it very specific instructions along those lines.
That's true. And Mark, this is my own question, if you don't mind me asking that. I wanted to know, in what ways, in your opinion, in what ways can generative AI contradict traditional methods of second language learning within the framework that you unpack, digital literacy, I mean?
Whoa, that's a really hard question, but certainly I think we need to develop people's critical skills. I mean, I think Kai Ling is a brilliant example because you know, her English is not yet at a native speaker level, but her thinking is extremely sophisticated. I mean, she's one of the most brilliant graduate students we've had. And she gets it. You know, her thinking is good enough that she can see that ChatGPT is good at generating text, but it's not that good at generating ideas. You know, from a simplistic point of view, it might look impressive in terms of its ideas, but she can see that it's not very good. So I think we need to get our students in critically output of ChatGPT. You know, compare a summary written by ChatGPT to a summary written by a student. Compare a translation done by ChatGPT to a translation done by an expert. See what its strengths are, see what its weaknesses are, and also see what its biases are.
Right.
You know, this isn't going away. You know, people who think that we can just wall this off and not use it. Yes, it's, you know, right now maybe you have to have an account to do it, but it's already coming into Google Docs. It's I already have it in my Google Docs. You know, you can get it in your Google Docs. You have to sign up for it, but if you're over 18, at least in the United States, I don't know about other countries, and you have a Google account, you can get it integrated into Google Docs. It's coming into Microsoft Word. So it's going to be in everybody's software. It's going to be ubiquitous everywhere. So we can't avoid it. Instead, we have to teach our students how to think critically about it.
I appreciate it. I mean, I cannot see that question in the Q&A box. If you can see it, please go ahead and read it.
Are you talking to me?
No, it was for Amin.
Yazdan, I want to go ahead and ask my own question. So
we don't have any
time for questions.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Mark, for your great presentation. I teach in a graduate program, master level program, and I teach a core course on research methodology. So obviously for the final research proposal, I use Turnitin, which is a plagiarism checker that UTPB, my institution, you know, has bought the license. Recently, Turnitin added a new feature that basically marks essays based on how much of the essay, for example, was written by AI. For example, you can get an originality report of 20%, but 80% written by AI. So I wanted to try it myself just to make sure that I'm, you know, grading my students' essays, you know, fairly. And I realized that when you write something and then ask ChatGPT to rewrite and improve the writing style of it, Turnitin would mark that as 100% written by AI. So again, according to rules and regulations that we have to, you know, not punish, but we have to encourage our students not to do that. But at the same time, I think that's a good thing because they're using ChatGPT just to improve their writing. Is another resource. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that and the debate that people, you know, are having these days on whether that can be considered plagiarism or not.
Well, you know, I think the important thing is disclosure and the purposes of the classes. So, you know, I mean, I might ask my students, you know, one thing that you can do within ChatGPT, you know, you can automatically save, you know, the entire interaction. So one thing, and it will produce a URL for you, and you can share. So if you give it a lot of questions, you know, and then it gives it responses, and then you click on, you know, save that, it will give you a URL. You could ask your students, you could allow them to do that, but you could ask them to give that URL to you so you can see exactly what they did. But it depends, you know, if the purpose of your class is to do, you know, highly refined editing by themselves, well, then you wouldn't want them to do that. For a research methods class, you know, I wouldn't mind that they did it. If I'm teaching a research class in a second language setting like you as, I might want to have that information. So you know, it depends on the goals of the teacher and the goals of the course. I don't happen to think that we should forbid it, but I think that a lot of cases we might want students to disclose it so we can see their work in different ways. But I also wanted to say one thing about this detection software. it's crappy. There's a lot of false positives and there's a lot of false negatives. So if we're going to use that, we can use that to start conversations with our students. We can use that to say, it looks like this, this is what comes up. Would you have anything to say about that? But I would not use it only by itself, to fail a student or even to accuse a student, because it's simply not accurate enough for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I believe that using ChatGPT is something that we should be proud of, not ashamed of, because it's another great resource that we have, to improve our writing. And for those of us learning languages, it can be a great resource to learn languages. So,
do you think one more question? Yes, before you ask the final question. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Yasna.
This is from Kim, one of the attendees, Mark. The International Conference on Machine Learning announced the policy stating papers that include text generated from large-scale language model, such as ChatGPT, are prohibited unless the produced text is presented as part of a paper's experimental analysis. AI tools can be used to edit and polish authors' work, say the conference organizers, but text produced entirely by AI is not allowed. This raises the question, where do you draw the line between editing and writing in digital literacy?
Well, that's a great question, and I won't pretend to know where to draw the line, but conference organizers have to worry about, all of a sudden they're going to be flooded by people who have no expertise, who do no research, who are submitting hundreds of spam papers to conferences to try to get them accepted, that are all produced by ChatGPT. So I can understand it's simplest to have a rule like that, because a rule like that, will get rid of all that spam, but it will also let, the Korean scientist I talk about, won't have to worry about polishing her work in edit, so she can use it to edit it. So I really think it's impossible to judge outside of a particular context. Whether you're teaching a course, whether you're whatever the context. But I think for a conference, I think you just need a simple and clear rule, and I think that's a good one for that.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I would also like to get your thoughts on this conference, because you have been very supportive of open access, open knowledge, and that's why you founded two journals, Language Learning and Technology, which is one of the top journals in the field, and it is 100% free open access, and another one is AERA Open, another important journal in the field of education in general. So what are your thoughts on a conference like this, which aims to provide an opportunity for participants from all around the world to join without paying hundreds of dollars?
Oh, well, this is fantastic, of course. And it's one of the advantages of doing conferences online, because when we used to do conferences in person, it was almost impossible to organize them for free, because you had to rent venues, and but now we can do them online. It creates the possibility of doing that, and a small fee, a fee of, let's say, $100 to register for conference, which might be very affordable for a professor in the United States, might be a huge obstacle for a graduate student in Indonesia or Senegal. So I compliment you on organizing a free open access conference like this, and I think this is the wave of the future in terms of really being able to share ideas internationally in our collective research mission.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And we are really glad that we had participants from 58 different countries. That was amazing. So for now, I would like to ask all the participants, if it is possible, to turn on your camera, we're just gonna take a screenshot so that we can later share on our social media, if that's okay with y'all. Is that okay with you, Dr. Warschauer?
Of course, I would love that.
Okay, so let's see. I can see 5, 6. And yes, and once again, we need to thank our audience. Many of them now, I know them by face and by their name, because it's been like they have been really active for 3 days.
And by the way,
Uh-huh.
one disadvantage of an online conference is, when it's over, I can't mingle with people and chat with them informally. So don't be shy. Send me an email. Let me know what you thought about the talk. Let me know what you're working on in your country. That's, to me, one of the great joys of going to conferences was intermingling with people around the world. And so please do me the honor of sending me a short email, and I'd love to hear from many of you.
Yeah, thank you for your kindness. So I'm gonna take a couple of screenshots. Yeah, go ahead, Yazan.
You necessarily need to choose the together mode or large gallery mode, or what?
Here's what I'm gonna recommend, because Microsoft Teams is so weird. So I'm encouraging everyone to take a screenshot. We will then share them all together, so we're gonna be all right. I have no idea which one would be better in terms of the angle and everything. Yeah. So from now until 10 seconds later, look at the camera. A lot of people are taking screenshots. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, I clicked on the wrong button. Wait, my bad.
Okay, at least let me take one on the count of 3, so then we can 1, 2, 3. Awesome. So I think we're good. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending Dr. Warschauer's keynote speech. By the way, the conference is not over. We have 3 other presentations, and then we will have the final, talk by the chairs of the conference. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Warschauer. We will be in touch, and we really, really appreciate your support.